Hi, my name is Bethany Rodriguez, and this is my final Ednoma project video. I decided that I would make a painting that reflects what I believe suicide is. This is it. So it is taking place in the sky, and there are three faces, and there is pooling around them. And the clouds, they're bright, they're metallic, and so are the faces as well. This is just some detailing that I thought would draw more focus to the center. And now, as you can see, when you're pretty far away, the faces do look like they're smiling, 1, 2, 3. However, when you get closer and get into detail, you do see that these are unhappy and kind of frightened faces looking up or down because they're already gone. So let's get into what suicide is. Suicide is the purposeful infliction of your own death. There are death seekers, death initiators, death ignorers, and death darers. A death seeker is a person that thinks about their death and they have that idea implanted in their mind. And then the death initiators are people that start their deaths because they know that they are going to die soon. It's mostly old people that do this, but often the chronically ill, terminally ill, will take their lives because they know that they're going to die. And death ignorers are people that don't really think that their life ends after death, that they are going to no longer exist. In this category, it's mostly children that want to see grandma who passed away, that think that heaven is an extension of life and that they can get there by killing themselves. And the death darers are people that incite their own death by doing dangerous things, with or without the intention of dying, such as people that take all their medication to feel high and then they end up overdosing, or a person that drinks alcohol and then they get in their car and then they don't really have a plan on what they are going to do, and they hurt themselves. The triggers of a suicide are often stressful events, moods, thoughts, alcohol, drug use, mental disorders, and modeling of other people that commit suicide. Stress is the largest trigger, and it can often trigger the other things that I have listed. So stressful events, you can lose your job, you can crash your car, your house can burn down, and these things can affect your mood. These things can affect your, how you cope with these things. A lot of people can turn to drugs. A lot of people can turn to alcohol. And with modeling, that in itself it's when a person models another person that committed suicide in their life, like a family member, a friend. So that's what modeling is, a stressful event that can lead to modeling. And then the underlying causes of suicide, there are 4 that I have listed: the psychodynamic, the sociocultural, the interpersonal, and the biological causes of suicide. And now the psychodynamic view explains suicide as the combination of depression and anger from others that they direct at themselves. And so they just hold all this anger in, and then they take it out on themselves because they believe that it's their fault. The individual thinks that it's their fault. Now, the sociocultural view, it emphasizes that the level of belongingness in your community can trigger you to commit suicide. So the less that you feel that you belong in your community, the more likely you are to commit suicide. And the interpersonal view, which is the interpersonal theory, it has two factors that it takes into account for suicide, and that is the perceived belongingness and the perceived burdenness, and then the thwarted belongingness. So the more you perceive yourself as a burden combined with the lower thoughts of belongingness can trigger someone to commit suicide. And biological, it does show that higher rates of suicide occur with the parents, the siblings, and the closer relatives of the person that is suicidal. Now, suicide is not necessarily linked to age. Anyone at any age can commit suicide. However, there is increases and decreases depending on ages. So from younger ages to middle age, it's an increase, and then it stabilizes. However, it does decrease when you get to the beginning of old age. However, at around age 75, it does increase again. Now, how do you treat a suicidal individual? There are two beginning treatments for helping a suicidal individual. Treatment after an attempt, which cognitive behavioral therapy can help with. It often has mindful-based therapy to accept painful thoughts. And then suicide prevention. There are multiple suicide prevention hotlines. There is crisis intervention with those suicide hotlines, and there are treatment centers for people that are having suicidal ideations. The National Suicide and Crisis Hotline is 988 for anybody that is thinking about hurting themselves or hurting others, and reach out if you need to. All right, so more biological factors on suicide include low levels of serotonin and brain circuit dysfunction. So these two things combined can persuade a person to commit suicide, mostly because it does show an increase in depression and mood changes. So can a new non-suicidal person be swayed to commit suicide? And short answer is yes. It is considered that everybody has the capability to commit suicide, and it should be noted that after another person commits suicide, friends, family are highly susceptible to commit suicide afterwards. And can suicide become an act of suggestion? The key word in this is can. And yes, a person can be an act of suggestion. Like if a bully can suggest it, be like, hey, you should kill yourself because you're not worth it. Like, you shouldn't be here and nobody likes you. And that can lead somebody to commit suicide. Now, how does the media portray suicide? The media is starting to take the portrayal of suicide more seriously. After 13 Reasons Why came out, there was a 28.9% increase in suicides in the first month that the show had aired. And after that, the media, especially Netflix, which produced the show, started to become more mindful about suicide prevention and to less romanticize suicide. So I will say that suicide has been romanticized in the media, especially pretty much for all time, since before Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, before stories of the Greek gods and stuff like that. Now, how does the media's portrayal of suicide affect rates of suicide? Now, the media is a very strong influence that can either cause an increase in suicides, like with 13 Reasons Why, where they were not very careful about showing the suicide itself and the laying out that plan for people. However, another example how the media did help decrease or negate suicide was with Kurt Cobain's death, where MTV aired a "Don't Do It" campaign afterwards, and they allowed viewers to call, and they directed them to suicide hotlines and crisis centers, and it did keep the suicide rate steady for that period of time. People did call. Now, suicide is the ultimate form of distress that can often be overlooked. Now, for anybody that does need help, I do recommend that you go to any available resources to you. I do know that Palo Alto or Alamo colleges does have help for people that need it, but if you aren't able to think in your right mind, 988 is the National Suicide Crisis Hotline Center. And after finishing this project, I have learned how to help people going through suicidal ideation better. I have learned how to do better when somebody in my life is also feeling that way and they feel like they have no other choice. Now, I hope to y'all that y'all never have to feel this way, but if y'all do, I hope that there is some sense of comfort in knowing that you can be helped, that you should not end it this way, that you are important, you are valuable, and I'll see y'all next time. Thank you for having me.